Over 60 and told to ditch bread, rice and potatoes. What if you didn't have to? You don't have to give up the foods that comfort you. I'm Dr. Emily Carter. For more than 20 years I've worked with older adults, helping people in their 60s, 70s and beyond keep the foods they love while improving blood sugar stability, energy and overall well-being. Today, I want to share 8 practical science-backed carb-savvy eating hacks designed specifically for people over 60. Simple steps you can use at home, at a family table, or in a small kitchen. A quick note before we begin. This is educational information, not individualized medical advice. If you take glucose-lowering medications, have kidney disease, significant heart disease, or other medical concerns, please talk to your healthcare provider before making major changes to your meals or starting new supplements. References to peer-reviewed research are available in the description. If this sounds helpful, please like and subscribe so more older adults can find balanced, evidence-based tips. Hack number 1. The fridge is your secret weapon. Resistant starch. Cook, cool, reheat. Why it matters. Starches are not all the same. When certain starchy foods, rice, potatoes, pasta, even some beans, are cooked and then cooled, a portion of the starch changes structure into what scientists call resistant starch. That altered structure is digested more slowly, which tends to blunt the blood sugar rise after a meal. It also feeds beneficial gut bacteria, producing short-chain fatty acids that support colon health and may help metabolic regulation. Evidence snapshot. Clinical studies vary, but many controlled trials find that meals made with cooled and reheated starches can reduce post-meal glucose spikes by a meaningful amount. Common ranges reported in trials are roughly in the low 10s to around 30% reductions depending on the food and study design. Results are individual. Factors like portion size, what else is on the plate, and your own digestion matter. Practical how-to, step by step. 1. Cook your starch as usual. A pot of rice, a tray of baked potatoes or pasta. 2. Cool it promptly. Allow it to come toward room temperature and then refrigerate. Aim for at least 12 hours of cooling. 12 to 24 hours is the standard window most research used. 3. Reheat if you like. Reheating doesn't erase the benefit. You can reheat rice, mash or pasta for a warm meal or use cooled starch cold in a salad. 4. Portion mindfully. Measure or eyeball a sensible portion instead of piling the plate. Combining the cooled starch with vegetables and protein will further soften the spike. 5. Use it in meal prep. Batch cook rice or potatoes for the week, cool them overnight in the fridge, and reheat single portions for lunch. Safety and food handling. Refrigerate within 2 hours of cooking and store at 40 degrees C or below. Use cooked starches within 3 to 4 days and reheat to steaming hot if you prefer them warm. If reheating isn't possible, cold salads with cooled pasta or rice are perfectly fine. If you've had frequent digestive upset when increasing resistant starch before, bloating or gas, start slowly, smaller portions, and increase over days. Practical example. If you like rice with dinner, cook a larger pot on Sunday evening, refrigerate it overnight, and reheat a portion for Monday's lunch. You'll be eating the same favorite dish, but with a gentler effect on your blood glucose. Mini hook. Hack number 2. Eat your salad before your sandwich. Hack number 2. Food sequencing. Vegetables and protein first, carbs last. Why it matters. What you eat first in a meal influences how quickly the sugars from the carbohydrates enter your bloodstream. Vegetables and protein, slow gastric emptying, meaning the stomach releases its contents into the intestine more slowly, and this leads to a more gradual rise in blood glucose. There are also hormonal effects. Early intake of protein and fiber stimulates insulin-modulating hormones and increases satiety, so you may naturally eat a bit less carbohydrate. Evidence snapshot. Several randomized trials have shown that simply changing the order of foods, vegetables and protein before starchy carbs, can substantially blunt the post-meal glucose peak. Depending on the study and the meal composition, reductions in peak glucose of notable size have been reported. Keep in mind the meal type and individual factors change the magnitude of effect. Practical how-to. Start your meal with a vegetable starter. A simple salad, steamed greens, or sliced veggies with a little olive oil and lemon. Even a cup of raw or cooked non-starchy vegetables works. 2. Move to protein. Eat your portion of fish, chicken, beans, egg, or dairy next. 3. Finish with the carbs. Bread, rice, potatoes, or pasta. Go on the plate last. Give a minute or two between courses if practical. Sip water while you eat the veg and protein. 4. If you're eating out, order a salad or a vegetable side first, take a small pause between courses, and then enjoy the carb portion. 5. For breakfasts, try a vegetable-heavy omelette or a yogurt with nuts before a piece of toast, rather than the other way around. Safe modifications. If you have dental issues, swallowing trouble, or limited appetite, a small spoonful of blended vegetable soup or a bite of a protein food first still gives benefit. If you are on medications that increase hypoglycemia risk, some older medicines or insulin, don't skip or delay medication timing without talking to your clinician. Practical example. At lunch, Helen, who lived alone and loved sandwiches, began putting a cup of carrot sticks or a small salad on the table and eating that first. She found she naturally ate less of the sandwich and felt less of that roller coaster sugar slump afterward. Mini hook. Hack number 3. Walk after you eat. 10 minutes is often enough. Hack number 3. Post-meal movement. Gentle activity, 10 to 30 minutes after eating. Why it matters. Muscle contraction helps glucose move from the bloodstream into muscle cells independent of insulin. A short bout of movement after a meal increases glucose uptake by working muscles, helping lower the post-meal rise. For older adults, this doesn't mean intense exercise. Gentle, consistent movement is effective. Evidence snapshot. Multiple studies show modest but meaningful reductions in postprandial glucose when people engage in light activity after meals. Typical effects cited in clinical trials fall roughly in the low teens to mid-20% reduction range for post-meal rises, but the exact number depends on the intensity, duration, and the meal itself. Practical how-to 1. Timing. Aim to move within 10 to 30 minutes after finishing a meal. That window balances digestion and activity. 2. Duration. Start with 10 minutes and build up toward 20-30 minutes as tolerated. 3. What to do. A gentle walk outside, walking around the house, marching on the spot, or doing light housework. For those with balance or mobility issues, seated marches, ankle pumps, or slow leg extensions while seated are good alternatives. 4. How to make it routine. Set a simple cue. Finish a meal, put on shoes and step outside, or keep a small checklist on the fridge. Short, frequent bouts after each meal work better than one long session later in the day for post-meal spikes. 5. Safety first. Wear supportive shoes, take care if you have balance issues, and if you have cardiovascular disease, check with your provider before starting a new activity routine. Practical example. Helen kept a pair of comfortable walking shoes by her kitchen door and took a 10-minute stroll around the block after lunch. She noticed that chest heaviness and fatigue after meals diminished, and the short walk became a pleasant social ritual. If weather or mobility makes walking hard, a seated leg routine done after meals produces a similar muscle contraction effect. Mini hook. Hack number 4. Eat most of your carbs earlier in the day. Hack number 4. Circadian timing. Move heavier carbs to morning and early afternoon. Why it matters. Our bodies are not equally sensitive to insulin at all hours. Insulin sensitivity tends to be higher earlier in the day. By evening, the combination of circadian hormones, including melatonin, and longer fasting periods, can reduce how efficiently cells take up glucose. That means the same rice bowl at noon may produce a smaller glucose rise than the same bowl late in the evening. Evidence snapshot. Research comparing earlier versus later carbohydrate intake shows better glucose control, improved weight and metabolic markers when more carbohydrate calories are consumed earlier in the day. The size of the effect differs by study and individual, but the pattern is consistent. Earlier distribution of carbs is gentler on blood sugar for many people. Practical how-to. 1. Plan your biggest carbohydrate portions for breakfast and lunch. Think of breakfast as an opportunity for a safe carb: oatmeal, whole grain toast, a bowl of rice with eggs, or a sandwich with plenty of veg, rather than a carbohydrate-restrictive meal. 2. Make dinner leaner on carbs. Choose a smaller portion of rice, a smaller baked potato, or swap mashed potatoes for extra roasted vegetables. 3. Finish eating at least 3 hours before bed when possible. If you go to bed at 10 p.m., aim to finish your last meal by 7 p.m. If social dinners push you later, make the later meal lighter in carbs. 4. Shift gradually. If you're used to big evening dinners, move 10–20% of your evening carbs to lunchtime for a couple of weeks and see how you feel. 5. Medication timing caution. If you have a medication schedule tied to meals, coordinate any timing changes with your clinician to avoid hypoglycemia. Practical example. For many older adults who have long social dinners, this shift feels practical. Helen switched her larger rice portions to lunchtime when she met friends for a weekly lunch club, and made evening meals mostly vegetables and protein. She found it easier to stay consistent with friends at lunch than to change the family dinner routine. Mini hook. Hack number 5. Think logs, not sawdust. Choose intact carbs. Hack number 5. Carbohydrate quality. Prefer whole and minimally processed options. Why it matters. Not all carbohydrates are created equal. Whole grains, intact kernels, and less processed tubers digest more slowly than refined flours and highly processed starches. Whole and minimally processed carbs retain natural fiber and structure that slow absorption, keeping blood sugar steadier over hours. A simple metaphor. Imagine 2 kinds of wood. A whole log that takes time to burn, and sawdust that lights quickly and flares up. Whole carbs are more like logs, steady, slow-burning fuel for your body. Refined carbs are like sawdust, a quicker flare that returns you to hunger and higher blood sugar. Evidence snapshot. Population studies and controlled feeding trials show consistent advantages to whole grains and minimally processed carbohydrate sources for post-meal blood sugar and longer-term metabolic health. The exact benefit depends on what you replace and on portion size, but choosing intact grains, sourdough bread, or whole potatoes often produces a gentler glucose response than highly refined alternatives. Practical how-to. 1. Choose intact or coarse grains. Brown rice, farro, barley, and quinoa keep more of their structure than highly processed white rice or instant rice. If you enjoy rice, try short or long-grain brown rice or a mix of brown and white for texture that you enjoy. 2. Embrace sourdough and whole-grain breads. Sourdough fermentation can reduce the glycemic impact of bread for many people. Look for breads with whole grains listed as the first ingredient and minimal added sugar. 3. Favor whole tubers over ultra-mashed or processed potato products. A baked sweet potato with skin will generally be more favorable than smooth, whipped mashed potato made with lots of butter and cream, both because of fiber and because texture matters in digestion. 4. Keep the peel. When appropriate, eat the skin of potatoes and apples. Often that's where more fiber sits. 5. Be mindful with portion sizes. Whole grains still count as carbohydrate calories. Plate composition matters. Pair them with vegetables and protein. 6. Taste and texture adjustments. If you grew up on refined white bread, shifting to whole grain or sourdough can be an acquired taste. Mix half and half at first, 1 slice of whole grain plus 1 thin slice of your familiar bread, or mix brown and white rice when you're transitioning. Practical example. Helen loved mashed potatoes, but she swapped to roasted sweet potato wedges with the skin and a small scoop of cooled, reheated rice alongside a large salad. The swap kept the comfort she valued, but reduced the rapidness of the post-meal glucose rise. Special considerations. If you have dental issues or trouble chewing, softer whole grain options like cooked oats or well-cooked whole grains can be easier. If fiber causes digestive discomfort initially, increase slowly and keep hydrated. Mini hook. Hack number 6. A small spoonful of vinegar can make a big difference, but not for everyone. Hack number 6. Vinegar before or with meals. Acetic acid's effect on digestion. Why it matters. Acetic acid, the active component in vinegar, slows gastric emptying and reduces the activity of some digestive enzymes, which can blunt the rate at which carbohydrates raise blood glucose. In small, practical doses, it's one of the simplest and lowest-cost strategies to try. What research says? Several small feeding studies report that taking a modest amount of vinegar before or with a meal can reduce the post-meal glucose rise. Typical amounts studied are in the range of about 1 to 2 tablespoons diluted in water. Effects vary between individuals and meals, and people with reflux or esophageal sensitivity may not tolerate vinegar well. Practical how-to. Gentle, tested approaches. 1. Dilute vinegar. Mix 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar or plain white vinegar into a full glass of water, 6 to 8 ounces. Drink this 10-15 minutes before a carbohydrate-heavy meal, or sip it alongside the first bites. 2. Use food forms. If drinking diluted vinegar isn't comfortable, use vinegar as part of a salad vinaigrette on the vegetable starter to deliver acetic acid without a sour shot. 3. Start low. Begin with a smaller amount. The taste can be strong for some people. See how your stomach and reflux respond before making it a daily habit. 4. Dental and reflux caution. Avoid swishing vinegar. Rinse your mouth after if you're concerned about enamel. If you have significant gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD, or chronic heartburn, talk to your provider before trying vinegar. It may worsen reflux for some people. 5. Medication interactions. Vinegar doesn't commonly interact with medications, but if you have complicated medical conditions or take medications for diabetes that cause low blood sugar, coordinate with your clinician. Safety note. If you have chronic reflux, a history of esophagitis, or routine throat irritation with acidic foods, vinegar may not be comfortable. Start with a vinaigrette approach rather than straight diluted vinegar. Practical example. Helen began by adding a light vinaigrette to her salad before eating her rice. She liked the flavor and avoided the stronger taste of a straight diluted vinegar drink. Over time, she alternated vinaigrette days. With days she tried the diluted version, noticing a milder post-meal rise on days when vinegar was part of the meal. At this point, we've covered 5 hacks in detail and started to explore vinegar. There are 3 more complementary strategies that build on the same principle: slowing digestion, supporting cellular response, and increasing the buffering effect of fiber. The next hacks explain how a small, soluble fiber preload can form a gel to slow absorption, and how magnesium and polyphenol-rich foods support insulin sensitivity at the cellular level. I'll walk you through exact foods you can add, safe starting amounts, and clear cautions, including who should check with their clinician before trying supplements, so that you can begin combining these techniques in simple, realistic meal plans that fit your life. Hack number 7. A small, soluble fiber preload, gel-forming fibers that slow absorption. Why it matters? A little soluble fiber taken before a meal works like a gentle speed bump for carbohydrates. When foods such as chia, psyllium, or cooked beans sit in your stomach and upper gut, they form a viscous gel that slows the rate at which sugar is released and absorbed. That slower delivery reduces the sharpness of the blood glucose rise and helps you feel satisfied longer, so you're less likely to reach for a second helping 20 minutes later. Evidence snapshot, clinical feeding studies and trials of single meals show that a soluble fiber preload can blunt the post-meal glucose peak in many people. Typical trial results report meaningful reductions, though the size varies by fiber type, amount, and the meal. The overall takeaway from the research is consistent. A modest amount of soluble fiber before a carb-heavy meal tends to make the glucose curve flatter without requiring you to eliminate the foods you love. Practical how-to. Gentle, realistic steps you can try at home. Start with a small, tolerable amount and build up slowly. If you're trying chia, mix about 1 tablespoon of chia seeds into roughly half a cup to a full cup of liquid, water, milk, or a plant milk, and let it sit for 10 to 20 minutes until it forms a gel. Take a few spoonfuls of that gel or enjoy it as part of a small pre-meal snack roughly 10 to 15 minutes before your main carbohydrate portion. If you prefer psyllium, a conservative approach is to begin with half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon, mixed in 6 to 8 ounces of water, stirred and drunk immediately. Follow with another glass of water. If you choose a legume preload, a small spoonful, 1 to 2 tablespoons of well-cooked beans or lentils as an appetizer, can act similarly. Vegetables high in soluble fiber, such as cooked carrots or a small bowl of lentil soup, can also serve as a preload. The goal is not to replace your meal, but to take a modest step that slows absorption before the main carbohydrate arrives. Titration and GI tolerance. If you have not used these fibers regularly, begin with the smallest amounts and increase over several days to a week. Some people experience bloating or gas when they increase fermentable fibers too quickly. Spacing the increases slowly and staying well hydrated reduces discomfort. Psyllium in particular needs adequate water to avoid forming a thick mass that is hard to swallow. Never take psyllium dry. If you have swallowing difficulties or a history of intestinal narrowing, discuss any new fiber supplement with your provider first. Safety notes. If you're on medications that have their absorption affected by fiber, some thyroid medications, certain oral drugs, separate the timing of the fiber preload and those medications by 1 to 2 hours, or check with your pharmacist or clinician for individualized advice. People with significant intestinal disease or a prior bowel surgery should consult their clinician before beginning concentrated fiber preloads. Practical example. On days when she planned a larger dinner, Helen blended a tablespoon of chia with a bit of yogurt and berries and had a few spoonfuls before her plate. She found that she felt less hungry during the meal and her mid-afternoon energy was steadier on the days she used the preload. Mini hook, hack number 8, support the cell, not just the meal, magnesium and polyphenols. Hack number 8. Cellular insulin sensitivity support, magnesium and polyphenol-rich foods, food first, supplement carefully. Why it matters. Managing blood sugar is more than changing what happens at the plate. The way your muscle and fat cells respond to insulin, what clinicians call insulin sensitivity, matters a great deal, especially with aging. Nutrients such as magnesium and compounds called polyphenols, found in berries, tea, cocoa, and many colorful plants, have been associated in studies with modest improvements in insulin signaling and glucose handling. Think of these nutrients as helpers that make your cells better able to accept and use the glucose that arrives after a meal. Evidence snapshot. Population studies and randomized trials suggest that diets higher in magnesium and polyphenol-rich foods are linked with lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes and small improvements in measures of glucose control. Intervention trials of magnesium supplementation show variable results. Some find modest benefit, particularly when people are deficient to begin with. Polyphenol-rich foods such as berries, green tea, and dark chocolate have repeatedly shown short-term reductions in post-meal glucose and improvements in insulin markers. The evidence supports a food-first approach, with supplements considered when dietary intake is inadequate or a clinician recommends them. Practical how-to, foods, timing, and sensible supplement thinking. Focus on food sources first. For magnesium, include foods such as leafy greens like spinach and Swiss chard, pumpkin and squash seeds, almonds, cashews, black beans, and whole grains. A simple plate habit is to add a handful of toasted pumpkin seeds to salads. Enjoy a small portion of almonds as a snack, or include a cup of cooked spinach alongside dinner. For polyphenols, choose berries, blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. Enjoy a cup of green tea or coffee in the morning if you tolerate caffeine. Add a few squares of dark chocolate, 70% cocoa or higher, in moderation, and use colorful vegetables and herbs, onions, garlic, turmeric, cinnamon, and colorful peppers in your cooking. These foods are safe, widely available, and bring other nutritional benefits such as fiber, vitamins, and antioxidants. Supplement caution and practical advice. If a clinician has identified low magnesium levels or you are unable to meet needs through diet, magnesium supplementation may be considered under medical supervision. Commonly used supplemental ranges in clinical trials vary, and while some adults take 200 to 400 milligrams daily, it's essential to check with your clinician first. Magnesium supplements can cause diarrhea at higher doses, and importantly, they are not safe in people with significant kidney impairment because the kidneys regulate magnesium levels. If you have chronic kidney disease or take medications that affect kidney function, speak with your healthcare team before starting magnesium supplements. Polyphenol supplements, such as concentrated green tea extracts or curcumin, are sometimes used, but they can interact with medications and vary widely in formulation and purity. Again, the food-first route is the safest and often sufficient. If you do use concentrated extracts, coordinate with your clinician, especially if you take blood thinners or other medications. Practical example. Helen added a cup of mixed berries to her morning yogurt and tossed pumpkin seeds onto her lunch salad 3 times a week. She also swapped one afternoon cookie for a small square of dark chocolate and found the flavor hit was satisfying without pushing her toward an extra slice of bread at dinner. Safety notes. If you take warfarin or other blood thinners, some herbal polyphenol supplements and high doses of vitamin K-rich greens may affect drug action. Talk to your prescriber. If you have chronic kidney disease, check before using magnesium supplements. If green tea or coffee upsets your stomach or disturbs sleep, choose decaffeinated options or time them earlier in the day. Stacking strategies. Combining hacks for additive benefits. The power of these techniques often lies in layering them sensibly. Think of each hack as a modest nudge. When 2 or 3 nudges are combined, the effect on a single meal's glucose curve can be meaningfully larger. It's both pragmatic and psychologically easier to adopt small changes that fit your routine than to overhaul your entire diet overnight. How to stack with intention. A practical menu framework. For a breakfast that is carb-savvy, start with a vegetable and protein component, for example, scrambled eggs with sautéed spinach. Add a source of polyphenols, such as berries, on the side. If you enjoy toast or oatmeal, prepare the grain in a way that favors slower digestion, oats or whole grain toast rather than refined cereal, and eat it last. If you want the added benefit of a preload, a tablespoon of chia stirred into yogurt 10 to 15 minutes before the plate arrives will blunt the early rise. Finish with a brief 5 to 10 minute walk around the house or a short seated leg routine if you prefer to move right after eating. For a lunchtime rice bowl, use a portion of cooled, reheated rice, resistant starch, as your base. Arrange a large vegetable salad first, a palm-sized serving of grilled fish or chicken next. Drizzle a vinaigrette made with vinegar over the greens, acetic acid effect, and enjoy the rice at the end. 10 to 20 minutes after finishing, take a 10-minute walk. This combination, resistant starch, food sequencing, vinegar, and movement, uses 3 to 4 complementary mechanisms to reduce the meal's glucose spike. For an evening meal, when you prefer to keep the family routine, make dinner lighter on carbohydrates. Choose a whole food carbohydrate such as a small baked sweet potato with skin. Start with a vegetable soup or broth, soluble fiber component if legumes are included. Add a protein and use polyphenol-rich seasonings such as turmeric or a pinch of cinnamon. Keep the meal at least 3 hours before bed. If you use vinegar, try it as a vinaigrette on the salad starter rather than a straight diluted shot to protect reflux. Suggested starter plan: choose 2 hacks to begin with and add 1 more every 2 weeks. If changing everything at once feels overwhelming, pick 2 complementary strategies to start. For example, try food sequencing plus a 10-minute post-meal walk for 2 weeks. When that becomes routine, add a resistant starch habit once or twice a week. After another 2 weeks, introduce a soluble fiber preload. This gradual layering helps your body and habits adapt and gives you time to notice what works best for you. Meal scenarios. Concrete examples you can copy this week. Breakfast scenario. 1. A gentle, stabilizing morning. Make scrambled eggs with spinach and mushrooms cooked in olive oil. Prepare 1 tablespoon of chia seeds in a small cup of water or milk and let it sit for 15 minutes. Eat the eggs and vegetables first. Then spoon the chia gel and berries and enjoy 1 slice of whole grain toast last. If you use glucose monitoring, check the pattern in the hours after breakfast to see how this composition affects your curve. Many people find breakfast with protein and vegetables is a comfortable, steady start. Lunch scenario 2. Rice that behaves. Use a portion of rice you cooked and refrigerated from the day before, reheat a scoop for warmth, and pair it with a big salad dressed in a vinegar-based vinaigrette. Have a grilled salmon fillet or a cup of black beans next. Finish the meal with the rice. 10 minutes after finishing, walk around the block or march on the spot for 10 minutes if weather or mobility makes an outdoor walk difficult. Dinner scenario. 3. Family-friendly and lighter on carbs. If your family tends to serve a large potato or rice portion, shift to a smaller side portion while increasing the vegetables on the plate. Offer a bowl of lentil or vegetable soup as a starter. Serves as a soluble fiber preload. Add a lean protein and keep the remaining carbohydrate modest and whole food based. Finish eating at least 3 hours before your usual bedtime. A realistic 4-week plan to build new habits. Week 1. Choose 2 easy wins. Food sequencing at every main meal and a 10-minute post-meal walk after lunch. Track how often you successfully do both. Notice energy and appetite differences. Week 2. Add resistant starch twice that week. Use cooled and reheated rice or chilled potato salad with meals you eat at home. Observe taste and glucose response if you monitor. Week 3. Introduce a soluble fiber preload 2 or 3 times that week before larger meals, starting with very small amounts and increasing only if tolerated. Week 4. Add magnesium-rich foods across the week. Pumpkin seeds on salads, a handful of almonds as a snack, and more leafy greens. Consider talking to your clinician about whether a supplement is appropriate based on your labs and kidney function. Monitoring progress. What to watch for and how to interpret changes. If you use a home glucose meter or continuous glucose monitor, CGM, you can look for changes in the height of the glucose peak after meals and how quickly levels return toward baseline. Expect individual variability. Some people notice changes within days. For others, improvements accumulate over weeks as overall insulin sensitivity improves and habits settle. Beyond numbers, pay attention to how you feel. Do you have fewer late afternoon energy dips, less mid-meal hunger, or easier digestion? Those subjective changes often accompany improved glucose patterns and can be the most motivating. When to contact your clinician, signs and situations that need attention. Contact your healthcare team if you experience frequent dizziness, faintness, sweating, or shakiness after meals, symptoms of hypoglycemia, or if you notice unexpected weight loss, persistent gastrointestinal pain, or any new or worsening symptoms. Also check with your clinician before changing or timing doses of glucose-lowering medications, and before starting supplements like magnesium, especially if you have kidney disease. If your glucose readings fall dramatically or you have any episode of severe low blood sugar, seek medical advice promptly. Helen's story. A realistic vignette of small changes, steady results, background and concern. Helen is 70, lives alone, and enjoys weekly lunches with friends and Sunday dinners with her family. She had been told by a well-meaning relative that she should simply cut carbs, but she found the idea of giving up rice and potatoes emotionally difficult. Her fasting glucose was in the pre-diabetes range, and she experienced afternoon energy dips and occasional post-meal fatigue that made it harder to keep her social schedule. What she tried and why. We worked together to choose 3 realistic changes she thought she could keep. First, she committed to food sequencing. Vegetables first, protein second, and carbs last. Second, she began taking a 10-minute walk after lunch, an activity she found pleasant and manageable. Third, she experimented with cooled and reheated rice twice a week because rice was an important comfort food for her family dinners. Implementation and timeline. In week 1, Helen focused on the new order at the plate and the post-meal walk. By the end of week 2, it felt routine. She kept a small checklist on her fridge and wore her walking shoes by the door. In week 3, she tried the cooled rice approach one evening and liked that the texture of reheated rice still satisfied her. She also tried a simple vinaigrette with dinner occasionally to see how vinegar affected her digestion. Throughout, she kept her medications unchanged and checked in with her primary clinician, who supported the plan and asked her to report any low glucose symptoms. What changed for Helen? Within a few weeks, Helen noticed a more consistent afternoon energy level and fewer sudden crashes after meals. She reported feeling calmer around food, less anxious about giving up her favorite dishes. Her home glucose checks showed lower post-meal spikes on the days she combined 2 or more strategies, such as vegetable first plus a short walk. Importantly, these were individual results and not proof for everyone, but they illustrate how approachable changes can build into meaningful daily benefits. Lessons and caveats from Helen's experience. Helen's routine worked because she started with what felt doable and added one small change at a time. She checked with her clinician before starting anything that might interact with medications, and she listened to her body, reducing fiber preloads when they produced bloating and choosing vinaigrette instead of straight vinegar when reflux flared. Her story is a model of realistic change rather than a dramatic cure. Small, consistent steps made life easier and more enjoyable without requiring drastic sacrifice. Common questions seniors ask and straightforward answers. Will these strategies replace my medication? No. These lifestyle strategies can support blood sugar stability but are not a substitute for prescribed medication. Always check with your clinician before making medication changes. If you notice lower glucose readings, do not reduce or stop medication without clinical guidance. How quickly will I see results? Some people notice changes within days, especially with movement and food sequencing. Other benefits, such as improved insulin sensitivity from dietary shifts, may take weeks to months. Look for both objective and subjective improvements. Are there risks to trying multiple hacks at once? The main risks are GI discomfort from increasing fiber too quickly, potential reflux provoked by vinegar, and interactions or safety concerns with supplements like magnesium in people with kidney disease. Start slowly, communicate with your clinician, and prioritize food-first approaches. What if I have limited mobility? Many hacks are adaptable. Food sequencing and resistant starch require no physical activity. Post-meal movement can be replaced by seated leg pumps, marching on the spot, or simple standing balance exercises. Work with a physical therapist if you have significant mobility or balance concerns. Practical troubleshooting and habit tips. If you forget the order at a family meal, place your salad on the side and take the first forkful of vegetables before the sandwich. If walking outside isn't possible after every meal, aim for one consistent post-meal activity per day and gradually increase. If digestive discomfort follows a new fiber habit, cut the fiber dose in half and increase more slowly with extra water. Food safety reminders and practical prep. When using resistant starch, refrigerate cooked starches within 2 hours, keep them at refrigerator temperatures, and use them within 3 to 4 days. Reheat to steaming if that is your preference. When preparing preloads like chia gel, keep them covered and refrigerated, if not eaten right away. If you have food allergies or swallowing difficulties, choose alternatives that are safe for you. Putting it all together, a short sample week plan you can try. Monday, practice food sequencing at all 3 meals and take a 10-minute walk after lunch. Aim for 1 magnesium-rich snack. Wednesday, use cooled, reheated rice for dinner. Add a vinegar-based salad before the plate. Friday, try a soluble fiber preload before a larger meal. Start with a small spoonful of chia gel. Sunday, choose a social meal at lunch with carbohydrate larger earlier in the day and a lighter, vegetable-focused dinner. Adjust this rhythm to your life. The goal is sustainable shifts you can keep for months and years, closing reassurance and realistic expectations. Being over 60 means your body's response to carbs may have changed, but it doesn't mean you have to give up the foods that comfort you. The strategies I've outlined are about working with how digestion and insulin behave as we age, using simple kitchen-level tools and small routines to make carbohydrates friendlier to your blood sugar. These are not quick fixes, and they are not replacements for medical care, but they are practical, evidence-informed ways to reduce the sharpness of post-meal glucose rises while keeping familiar foods on the table. Final practical reminders. Start small. Pick 1 or 2 strategies and make them routine for a couple of weeks before adding another. Check with your healthcare provider before starting supplements, or if you have kidney disease, significant heart disease, or are taking glucose-lowering medicines. If you experience symptoms of low blood sugar or any concerning new symptoms, contact your clinician promptly. This was designed as educational information based on peer-reviewed research and clinical experience. References and a short reading list are linked in the description below for those who want to dive deeper. If this video helped you feel a little less worried about bread, rice, or potatoes, and a little more confident about practical steps you can take, please like and subscribe for more balanced, evidence-based tips aimed at people over 60. Tell me in the comments which carb-savvy hack you'll try first, and remember to check with your healthcare provider before making medication or supplement changes.